add to that. But I will like to welcome Dan Pearson to the stage. Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. I just wanted to say what a wonderful welcome this is to a rewilding of the mind, and what an amazing title. I just want to ask first, though, who was here at the last conference? So that's a big proportion of people. And it was a conference that was in 2018, but it's something I think that for all those people who were here then has really stayed in the mind. And it was a fantastic piece of education and thought-provoking process. And we are all in process in this world that we are occupying in, making gardens and landscapes and engaging with them. And to be constantly thinking and educating ourselves is incredibly important. Some of those lectures that I still have very much in my mind were marked by Olivia Filippi, which by that point in the lecture was barefooted, standing on stage talking about the importance of engaging with your environment, and announcing at the very beginning of his lecture that irrigation was the singular most dangerous thing you could introduce into a garden. Peter Korn's experiments with sand, which at that point, 4 years ago, was very much a specialist arena. And I can think of so many people talking about gardening and sand now, which I'm sure has been something that was really lifted off by that conference. Then there was Cassian Schmidt with his wonderful introduction to Hermanshof, which is the most incredible place of learning, and a garden that is beautifully layered with planting that is so well observed, and observed through looking at nature. If you look at Cassian's posts on Instagram, they're incredibly informative, and they're always going back to the natural world for inspiration. And then, of course, there was Midori's beautiful talk where she discussed her thoughts about gardening very lightly in the forest itself, and that beautiful concept of bringing her nursery plants along within the forest in niches that she'd found where she had identified where they would do best, and then just leaving them to do their thing until she needed them. And then she would go back in and take them out again. And that just seemed so perfectly in harmony. And it's very much, I think, what this conference keys into. And it's a real privilege to be welcoming you to the second conference by the Beth Chatto Trust, the Education Trust, which is a wonderful thing that was set up, of course, by Beth herself, who was born, not herself, but as a result of Beth's natural nature as an educator. Her incredible show gardens that I became aware of when I was in my early teens, that were so groundbreaking at that time, working with wild plants, using them in a very naturalistic way, and communicating to people the importance of there being a connection between the natural world and how we garden in an artificial garden setting. And it's great to see these little islands of planting here on the stage. I notice there are moist gardens and dry ones. So that ethos is still coming through. Her superlative nursery, of course, which is still one of the best nurseries in the country, and her well-thumbed catalogue, which is somewhere I go to again and again for best advice and information. And her books with their deep-seated, deep-rooted knowledge that all came through her own personal experience of gardening, experimenting with plants. It's easy to forget that she was a pioneer, always thinking of the future through a here-and-now engagement with her plants. And the gardeners still say at Beth Chatto's, what would Beth do now? You know, she was an incredible leader on that front. The Education Trust has gone on to evolve as her gardens have, and they now have a horticultural course which they're running to make gardening accessible and digestible to people. And they're in the process of working with other groups, notably the Chatterwood Project Housing Development, which is in the back of your brochure here. And in exchange for the name Chatterwood, Beth's team asked for the streets and the pavements in that development to be planted with the plants from the nursery in a way that was sustainable for this local environment and with a long-term maintenance very much in mind. So there are promises of more conferences. So this is just the beginning of a really wonderful thing. So thank you very much, the Beth Chatto Education Trust. Rewilding the mind provokes a question and, in turn, a curiosity. As gardeners and designers, we are the coalface of a quantum shift that is demanding change, and we're all having to question more deeply. Triggered as much by biodiversity loss and the protagonist of climate change, we need to act quickly now. And surely the best way to move forward quickly is to expose yourself to new ways of thinking. Rewilding is a term that has very quickly gathered currency. Clients are now approaching us in our practice with this at the very first point in their brief. But do they understand that this demands to a degree that you start to see yourself as being part of an ecosystem and not divorced from it, and relinquish a degree of control at whatever scale you're working? For too long, we have been the agents of control, over-farming our lands, depleting our soils and felling our forests, overdeveloping our cities, and dare I say it, over-gardening our gardens. It is time to tread more meaningfully. But now and through necessity, change is in the air. Developers are writing in green that is more than mere greenwash. We have meadows on our roofs and pocket forests reclaiming our streets. People are seeking out a nature connection to improve the very quality of our lives. And understanding how we fit into the natural world is key. As gardeners and designers, we have agency in this debate. This is really important. So these are exciting times for their challenges. Everyone is here because we believe in the potential of horticulture and the environment to facilitate positive change and to improve our lives personally and collectively. The challenge for all of us now is to reevaluate our relationship with the environment. What is it going to be like to be gardening in 10 years' time? What we have learned now that will be relevant in a world of potential extremes. One thing I'm sure of is that the knowledge shared at this conference will give us some of our tools to find our way forward. So let Rewilding the Mind begin.